Have you ever looked at the sheer, bewildering variety of human faiths? The magnificent cathedrals, the incense-filled temples, the quiet groves of sacred trees, and asked yourself not what people believe, but why they believe in the first place? Why does this strange and powerful software called religion run on the hardware of nearly every human culture in history? It's a question that cuts to the very core of who we are. Here on the God Mirage, we aren't content with simply accepting or rejecting faith. We want to understand its architecture, to pop the hood on the human psyche, and see the cogs and wheels of belief turning. Today we embark on a journey, not of faith, but of inquiry. We're traveling back to the dawn of human consciousness, to the Pleistocene plains and the flickering firelight of the first communities, to uncover the blueprints of the gods. And in this exploration, we find ourselves part of a global but often quiet community of thinkers. In most parts of the world, simply questioning the dominant faith can make you a distinct minority, a curious outsider in your own home. It's a fascinating thought, isn't it? Let us know in the comments where you're watching from and what the social landscape is like for a post-theist mind in your corner of the globe. Your perspective adds a vital piece to this puzzle we're all solving together. And while you're down there, a simple click on the like and subscribe buttons helps our signal of skepticism cut through the chorus of certainty. Now, let's begin. The Echo in the Cave, a mind wired for ghosts. To understand the birth of religion, we must first understand the mind in which it was born. We have to strip away the millennia of civilization, the libraries of theology, the comfort of modern science, and imagine the raw, unfiltered experience of an early human. Picture it. You are a creature of middling strength, newly bipedal, with a brain that is ballooning in size and complexity at an unprecedented, almost terrifying rate. The world around you is not a landscape to be managed. It is an immense, unpredictable, and often lethal theater of forces you cannot possibly comprehend. The night is an ocean of blackness, punctuated by the cries of things with bigger teeth than you. A flash of lightning isn't a discharge of atmospheric electricity, it is a searing, instantaneous crack in the ceiling of the world. A sudden fever is not a viral infection. It is an invisible thief stealing the warmth and life from your child's body. A rock slide is not a result of erosion and gravity. It is the mountain itself, stirring in anger. This world is, in a word, terrifying. In this environment of constant existential threat, the human brain developed a crucial survival tool, a cognitive shortcut. Philosophers and cognitive scientists call it the Hyperactive Agency Detection Device, or HADD. It's a bit of a mouthful, but the concept is elegantly simple. The brain is a pattern-finding machine, and its primary directive is to keep its owner alive. So, when faced with an ambiguous event, a rustle in the tall grass, a shadow moving at the edge of your vision, a strange noise in the dark, the brain has a choice. It can assume the cause is a non-agent, like the wind, or it can assume the cause is an agent, a creature with a mind, with intentions, a predator, a rival, or something else. From a purely evolutionary standpoint, the cost of a false positive, thinking the wind is a lion, is minimal. You get a little startled, your heart races, and you move on. But the cost of a false negative, thinking a lion is just the wind, is catastrophic. It's the end of your genetic line. Nature, therefore, selected for brains that made the safer bet. It selected for paranoia. We became the descendants of the anxious apes who jumped at every shadow. We are hardwired to see agency, purpose, and intent, where there often is none. This is the foundational soil from which the first seeds of the supernatural would sprout. The question our ancestors asked was not, what caused the lightning, but rather, who threw the lightning? The question was not, what is the nature of this disease, but who is feeding on our life force? The forces of nature, the storm, the sun, the hunt, the plague, were not impersonalists. They were yous and theys. They were entities. They had minds, moods, and desires. The rustling in the grass became the spirit of the tall grass. The flash of light became the sky god's momentary glance. The groaning of the earth became the slumbering giant beneath your feet. This is not a failing of the ancient mind. It is its greatest, most imaginative survival strategy. Personifying the unpersonable gave it a handle. It transformed a chaotic, random universe into a social one. And a social universe, even one filled with grumpy, invisible, and powerful beings, is something a social primate like Homo sapiens can work with. You can't reason with a hurricane, but you might be able to bargain with a wind god. You can't negotiate with a virus, but you might be able to appease the demon of sickness with a gift. This is the first crucial step. The world becomes populated not with forces, but with faces. The empty cave of existence begins to fill with echoes, and those echoes sound remarkably like voices. This innate tendency is bolstered by another cognitive quirk, pareidolia, the tendency to perceive familiar patterns, especially faces in random data. Seeing a man in the moon, a face in the clouds, or a figure in the grain of a piece of wood. For a brain already primed to detect agents, the entire world becomes a canvas for these supernatural projections. The universe wasn't just speaking, it was looking back at you. Religion did not begin as a sophisticated theological doctrine. It began as a cognitive misfiring, a life-saving glitch in our pattern recognition software that mistook the howling of the wind for the whisper of a god. It began with the profound and chilling realization that we were not alone, even when we were by ourselves. Weaving the cosmic quilt, the comfort of a story. Once the world was populated with these invisible agents, these spirits and proto-gods born from our hyperactive imaginations, the next logical step was to figure out their stories. What do they want? Where did they come from? And most importantly, what is our relationship to them? This is where humanity transitions from simple superstition to the grand, sprawling enterprise of mythology. This is the birth of the explanation. Before the development of the scientific method, religion held an absolute monopoly on answering the great why questions of existence. It was the only game in town. The human mind abhors a vacuum, especially a narrative one. We crave coherence. A world of disconnected random events is deeply unsettling. A story, any story, is better than no story at all. And so, we began to weave. From the threads of our fears, our hopes, and our observations, we wove the first cosmic quilts. These were the great creation myths, the epic tales that explained everything from the rising of the sun to the sting of a scorpion. Why is there a world at all? Because a god like Marduk slew a primal sea monster and fashioned the heavens and the earth from her corpse? Or because a divine intelligence spoke it into existence from a formless void? Or because it was hatched from a cosmic egg? The specific details were endlessly variable, shaped by local geography and culture, but the function was identical: to provide a definitive starting point, to anchor our bewildering present in a comprehensible past. And what about the daily mechanics of the world? Why does the sun travel across the sky? It's not a star of burning gas held in gravitational balance with its planets. Of course not. It's the god Helios, or Apollo, or Ra, driving a flaming chariot on his daily, arduous journey. Why do the seasons change, bringing the hardship of winter and the relief of spring? It isn't due to the axial tilt of the planet. It's the result of a divine drama. The goddess Persephone has been abducted into the underworld, and her mother Demeter, the goddess of the harvest, mourns for her, letting the world grow cold and barren until her daughters return. These stories are not just quaint fireside tales. For millennia, they were the most advanced physics, astronomy, and biology available. They transformed the terrifyingly impersonal mechanics of the cosmos into a family drama, a soap opera of the gods. And this made the world feel manageable. It gave us the illusion of control. If the rains fail, you know why? The rain god is displeased. And if you know why, you have a course of action. You can offer a prayer, perform a ritual, make a sacrifice. You have agency. In a world governed by random atmospheric pressure systems, you are a helpless victim. In a world governed by a grumpy rain god, you are a participant. You have a lever to pull. The story, in a very real sense, domesticates chaos. This explanatory function extends to the most personal and painful questions of all. Why is there suffering? Why do good people get sick? Why must we work so hard just to survive? The myths provide answers. Perhaps we live in a fallen world, tainted by an original sin, an act of primordial disobedience. Perhaps we angered the gods, and this life of toil is our punishment. Perhaps we are being tested, our suffering a crucible designed to forge our souls for a better world to come. These explanations may seem bleak, but they are profoundly comforting compared to the alternative. That suffering is random, meaningless, and serves no higher purpose. A story of punishment is better than a story of nihilism. It gives meaning to pain, which is one of the most powerful psychological balms ever invented. And of course, there is the final question: what happens when we die? The chilling silence of biological cessation is, for many, the most unbearable thought of all. And so the myths weave their most intricate and hopeful patterns. Our consciousness doesn't just stop, it travels. To the fields of Elysium, to Valhalla, to the underworld for judgment, through a cycle of reincarnation, or to a heavenly paradise. The body may fail, but the story continues. The narrative quilt is thrown over the abyss of oblivion, providing warmth and comfort against the ultimate cold. It's fascinating how many of these ancient stories from every corner of the earth tackle the exact same problems with wildly different casts of characters. What's the most unusual or interesting creation story or explanation for a natural phenomenon you've ever come across? Share it in the comments below. Let's build a little library of humanity's first attempts at science. The divine contract. Forging the tribe. The stories were woven, the cosmos was named, and the mind had found a fragile comfort in a world of invisible agents. But this was only the beginning. For religion to become the globe-spanning, institution-building force we know today, it had to evolve from a personal coping mechanism into a collective one. It had to become the very engine of society itself. The next great chapter in our story is about how faith became the ultimate social glue, the primordial contract that allowed small, distrustful bands of primates to scale up into cooperative, city-building civilizations. Imagine a world without police, without courts, without written contracts or credit scores. This was the human reality for the vast majority of our history. In a small hunter-gatherer group of a few dozen individuals, social order is maintained by direct reputation. Everyone knows everyone else. If you cheat, steal, or fail to pull your weight, you are quickly identified and ostracized, a fate that often meant death. But what happens when your group grows to a few hundred or a few thousand? You can no longer know everyone personally. You encounter strangers every day. How can you trust them? How do you know the person you're trading with won't simply run off with your goods? How do you build a large-scale irrigation project that requires the coordinated labor of hundreds of people you've never met? This is where the gods got a significant upgrade. They evolved. They transformed from the capricious, amoral nature spirits of early animism into something far more powerful. Great moralizing high gods. These weren't just gods of the sun or the hunt anymore. They were gods of justice, truth, and reciprocity. And crucially, they were watching. Always. This was the masterstroke. The invention of an omniscient, supernatural policeman who could see into your heart and mind solved the problem of anonymous cooperation. Even if no human saw you cheat, God did. Even if you could escape the tribe's justice, you could not escape divine retribution, whether in this life or the next. This shared belief in a cosmic Big Brother created a circle of trust that could extend far beyond personal acquaintance. If you and I both genuinely fear the wrath of the same all-seeing deity, I can reasonably assume you won't swindle me, not because you like me, but because you fear the consequences from a power far greater than me. Religion became a kind of tribal operating system, a shared code of conduct guaranteed not by flimsy human promises, but by the perceived certainty of supernatural enforcement. To make this system work, however, you needed a way to tell who was genuinely part of the system and who was just pretending. You needed a way to sort the true believers from the freeloaders. And for this, humanity invented one of its most peculiar and enduring social technologies: the costly signal. A costly signal is an action or ritual that is so difficult, expensive, or painful to perform that a faker would be unwilling to do it. It's a way of proving your commitment to the group by making a credible, hard-to-fake sacrifice. Think of the long, arduous fasts, the elaborate and time-consuming daily prayers, the painful body modifications, the intricate dietary restrictions, or the donation of significant wealth to a temple. These aren't arbitrary rules. They are social filters. Anyone can say they believe, but only a true believer would be willing to go through the month of Ramadan, or undertake a years-long pilgrimage, or give up 1/10 of their income. By performing these costly rituals, individuals signal to the rest of the group, I am one of you. I am so invested in our collective values that I am willing to suffer for them. You can trust me. I am a reliable partner for hunting, for trade, for marriage, for war. And the evidence for this is overwhelming. Throughout history, the groups that have thrived, expanded, and conquered have almost always been the ones bound by the strongest religious ties, reinforced by the most demanding rituals. This divine contract, this belief in a celestial enforcer, and the public demonstration of loyalty through sacrifice, gave these groups an unparalleled cooperative advantage. It allowed them to cohere, to trust, and to act as a single formidable unit. Religion, in this sense, wasn't just about believing, it was about belonging. And belonging in the brutal calculus of human evolution was the ultimate key to survival. The scepter and the staff, power and control. With societies bound by divine contracts and a shared fear of celestial judgment, the stage was set for religion's final and most world-altering transformation, its fusion with power. As communities grew from villages into cities and from cities into empires, a new class of specialists emerged. These were not just hunters or farmers, they were the entrepreneurs of the sacred, the brokers of the divine, the shamans, the oracles, the priests. These individuals claimed a privileged connection to the invisible world. While others saw only shadows, they saw the gods. While others heard only the wind, they heard divine pronouncements. They were the ones who knew the correct rituals to appease the angry spirits, the secret words to whisper for a good harvest, the complex calendars of celestial movements that dictated the fate of all. This monopoly on sacred knowledge gave them immense influence. They became the gatekeepers between the human and the divine, and in doing so, they accumulated a currency more valuable than gold or grain: spiritual authority. It was only a matter of time before this spiritual authority formed a powerful, symbiotic alliance with secular power. The chieftain with the biggest spear joined forces with the priest who spoke for the biggest god. This was the birth of the state as we know it, founded on the twin pillars of the scepter and the staff, the throne and the altar. Rulers quickly realized that a population that believes you are merely the strongest man is a population that will overthrow you as soon as a stronger man appears. But a population that believes you are chosen by the gods, that your authority is not just a matter of earthly might, but of cosmic destiny, that is a population you can rule in perpetuity. And so kings became more than kings. The Pharaoh of Egypt was not just a monarch, he was the living incarnation of the god Horus. The emperors of Rome were deified. The rulers of Europe governed by the grace of God, their divine right to rule making rebellion not merely a political act of treason, but a spiritual act of blasphemy. Religion became the ultimate tool of legitimation, transforming raw, brutal power into righteous, sacred authority. It answered the fundamental political question of, why should I obey you? With the most profound answer imaginable, because God commands it. This fusion cemented social hierarchies and created an incredibly effective system of mass control. The laws of the land were no longer just the suggestions of a ruler. They were divine edicts etched in stone by the finger of God himself. The Code of Hammurabi was presented as a gift from the sun god Shamash. The 10 Commandments were delivered from a holy mountain amidst thunder and lightning. To break these laws was to invite not just the punishment of the state, but the eternal damnation of your immortal soul. This provided an enforcement mechanism that no police force could ever hope to replicate. A cop inside every citizen's head. Furthermore, religion offered the perfect justification for the vast inequalities that arose in these new, complex societies. Why are some born into immense wealth and power, while the vast majority toil in poverty? It is the will of the gods. It is your ordained place in the cosmic order. It is your karma from a past life. This celestial endorsement of the status quo was a powerful opiate for the suffering masses, promising them justice and reward in a future life in exchange for their compliance and labor in this one. The tool that had once bound a small tribe together in mutual trust had now been scaled up to organize millions, but often at the cost of entrenching profound injustice, stifling dissent, and granting a near unassailable mandate to the powerful. The architecture of faith had built the cathedrals and the pyramids, but it had also built the prisons of the mind. Conclusion: waking from the dream. So, why were religions created? We have journeyed from the deepest recesses of the anxious primate mind, with its ghost-detecting glitches, to the grand narratives woven to make sense of a terrifying world. We saw how those stories became a divine contract, a form of social glue that allowed our ancestors to build communities of unprecedented size and complexity. And finally, we saw how that glue was co-opted, how it became a foundation for power, a means of control, and a justification for empire. Religion, when you strip it back, appears not as a divine revelation, but as a profoundly human invention. It is a testament to our species' creativity, our desperate need for meaning, our capacity for cooperation, and yes, our susceptibility to control. It is an evolutionary toolkit, cobbled together over millennia to solve the pressing problems of survival, explanation, and social order. To understand this is not to mock the believer or to diminish the staggering works of art, music, and literature that faith has inspired. It is simply to turn on the lights. It is to see the phenomenon for what it is: a magnificent, complex, and often beautiful product of human psychology and sociology. Here on the God Mirage, this understanding is our starting point. We acknowledge the role religion played in getting us here, but we also recognize that we now have better tools. We have the scientific method to explain the cosmos, secular ethics to guide our morality, and democratic principles to legitimize our governments. We can build communities on shared humanistic values rather than shared superstitions. We can find meaning in our connection to each other and to the one tangible world we know we have, rather than in promises of another. We are waking from a long and powerful dream and beginning to see the world with our own eyes. What do you think? Is this four-part journey from psychological quirk to explanatory myth to social glue to power structure a complete picture? Or is there a crucial piece of the puzzle we've missed? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And if this journey into the human origins of belief resonated with you and you want to continue deconstructing the divine, be sure to like this video, subscribe to the God Mirage, and ring that notification bell. The age of unquestioning faith may be ending, but the age of understanding has just begun.